Hello, everybody. Peter Greenberg here with our weekly global travel update this week from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in Riyadh. I'm here attending a global travel summit called Tourize. Representatives of more than 100 countries at the leadership level are here discussing everything from sustainability to the government shutdown to tariffs to world trade, airline prayers, planes, trains, and automobiles. An amazing assortment of world leaders. And of course, I'm lucky enough to be here to talk to them and learn from them so I can share with you everything I learn later on. But first and foremost, before we get to everybody's questions, we have so much to talk about in the news, of course, starting with the government shutdown and what's happening and what's not happening. As you know, the Senate voted to do the CR. We're waiting now for the House vote and then for the president to sign it. Assuming that happens, we might be back on track by next Monday or Tuesday. And the reason for that is it's still predicated on staffing issues at the FAA with air traffic controllers, right? You can't just say, okay, we're writing checks now, everybody get back in the air. Doesn't work like that. So you're going to still see cancellations and delays through the rest of this week. Remember, it's predicated on the ability for the controllers who are working to handle that capacity and handle that flow. Not that easy. Let us remind ourselves that even before the government shutdown, we were already short 3,500 controllers. That problem is still with us. They may have hired 2,000 new trainees, emphasis on the word trainee. What does that mean? 2 to 3 years down the road before they're allowed to sit at a console. So that's what's going on there. Now, if you have bought a ticket, let me give you the rules as they currently exist. And by the way, they exist whether or not it's a government shutdown or any other day of the week you might be flying. If the airline cancels your flight for any reason whatsoever other than weather, you're entitled to a full and immediate refund back to your original form of payment, okay? If you cancel the flight, you get a flight credit for that dollar amount that you can use for the next year. But a caveat on that, it's not based on when you were flying, that 1 year expiration validity, it's based on when you bought the ticket. So if you bought the ticket 6 months ago, you cancel your flight, you only have another 6 months to use that credit. Don't forget that. The clock starts ticking there. Other passenger rights don't really exist. We are Neanderthal compared to, the European Union. They've had EC Rule 261 in place for a long time. If your flight is delayed or canceled there, they write you a check on the spot. They provide accommodations. They give you meals that go way beyond a $10 Auntie Anne's coupon at the airport. As much as I love those pretzels, $10 doesn't go very far. So now airlines have mission statements, but they're carefully worded to be too general. I'm talking about the US, where their intention is to take care of you, but they're not in any way, shape, or form required to by any kind of government mandate. And as I always like to say, and this bears repeating right now, if there aren't severe financial consequences for bad behavior, the behavior continues, right? So I'm going to talk about that in a second as well. We're also going to talk about the UPS plane crash in Louisville, what we know, what we don't know, and some unbelievable reminders of the worst aviation disaster in American history that happened on May 25th, 1979, a story that I covered then and continue to report about today because of the lessons learned and the lessons applied. But first, let me remind you, we're coming up on an anniversary. It was November 12th, 2001, American Airlines Flight 587 from JFK to the Dominican Republic. And upon takeoff, it was an A300 from Kennedy. There was a Japan Airlines 747 that had taken off ahead of him. That's not a big problem. There was some wake turbulence. And when they got buffeted by that, after they took off, the co-pilot did what he was instructed to do in the manual, exercise the rudder. And in doing so, the tail fell off the plane and everybody died. Literally just 2 months after 9/11, a terrible disaster out there in Rockaway. The reason why I'm bringing that up is the reason why we're going to discuss the UPS plane crash. How did that American Airlines A300 crash? It was the first production Airbus that was delivered to American Airlines back in 1988. But on the production line, and this is important, anytime they're investigating an airplane crash, they go right back to the production line to see if there are any problems that happened then. They have go teams investigating human factors and fuel and wind and altitude and pressure and engines, you name it. But when they went back to the production line issue on that particular plane, what did they find? that Airbus had done a very bad tail fix, meaning the actual assembly of the tail to the fuselage, and it was terrible. So they went back and they fixed it, and they were allowed to do a temporary fix. And that became a permanent fix, and it didn't hold. And on November 12th, 2001, the tail fell off. Why did I bring this back? Because at the root of the worst aviation disaster in American history in 1979, at the root of what we now know about the UPS MD-11 crash in Louisville, it goes back to either assembly or maintenance. Let me tell you what we know. First of all, I'll tell you about the MD-11 in Louisville, and then tell you about the American Airlines DC-10 Flight 191 in Chicago back in 1979. On the UPS MD-11, they were able to recover the black boxes, both the cockpit voice recorder and the flight data recorder, and that's key to figuring out what didn't happen as well as what did. And what did they find out? That as the plane was rolling down the runway, he was fully loaded to take cargo on an 8-hour flight from Louisville to Honolulu. So full cargo, full fuel, well within margins, but he was heavy. And as they were rolling down the runway, 37 seconds after takeoff, the CVR recorded the warning bell saying there was a fire in the engine. That's the left engine. That's an engine fire warning. But the fire alarm actually happened after the word takeoff was called, but before they actually took off. So they actually heard it, and it continued 25 seconds prior to the crash. But the pilots couldn't see that engine. All they could see was their instruments. And according to them, they were getting to the speed that they needed to be at. Now, a DC-10 or an MD-11 in this case, and any commercial airplane is designed to fly on less than their full engines. They're not designed to take off on that, especially when they're fully loaded. So what really happened here? That engine on the left side literally ripped off the pylon, and the pylon went with it, and the engine disintegrated, and it was fed by fuel, and the fuel caused the fire. It became, the instruments and the actual levers became asymmetrical. The pilots lost any kind of control. They never got much altitude. They only got about 80 feet up. This is not a normal takeoff rotation, and we all know what happened next. So what do investigators know? Well, let's go back and take a look at it. When they went back to the runway at Louisville after the crash, even though the plane crashed into a sort of an industrial area outside the airport, what did they find on the runway? They found the engine. They found all the parts littering the runway. And when the engine had spooled the takeoff thrust, the fuel flow increased, and then the fire rapidly intensified as the pylon failed. That's the wing. Now, how did that happen? Well, that's what they're looking at now. They're going back to maintenance to see what's the maintenance history of that plane. Was it grounded for any reason? And guess what? It was, for problems on that pylon and on that wing. Who fixed it? How did they fix it? And who inspected it? That's what they're looking at now. Now, this gave me strange reminiscence about May 25th, 1979. That was American Airlines Flight 191 on the Friday of Memorial Weekend that year. I lost friends on that flight, and it was a story that I continue to report because of what really happened and what really didn't happen. It's a perfect example of where the FAA has failed and maybe continues to fail today, and I'll get to that in a second. On that particular aircraft, it was in Tulsa at American's maintenance facility getting an engine change. Standard, it happens. In the maintenance manual written by McDonnell Douglas, it has a specific rule that no engine change should be done with a forklift truck because the forklift could lose pressure and the weight of the engine on the pylon will be too strong and it could hurt the engine, the pylon, or both. But American Airlines and maintenance in Tulsa said, you know what? We can save 4 hours per engine change by using the forklift truck. And they went to the FAA and said, we're going to do it anyway. And you know what the FAA said? Okay. What was that all about? So here's the scenario. That plane was in the maintenance bay. They had the engine under the pylon on the forklift truck to fasten the 4 bolts in that fastens it to the pylon on the wing. They got 2 of the bolts in when the lunch whistle blew. They all went to lunch. And during that lunch period, the hydraulic pressure dropped. And the weight of the engine was so much that it broke one of the bolts it meant the other, but the workers didn't know it. They just came back and put the other 2 bolts in. The plane flew as an empty ferry flight to Chicago, where it became American Airlines Flight 191. And on takeoff, the engine literally flew off the plane. It was a fully loaded flight, Memorial Day weekend. It flew off the plane. The plane, like the MD-11, became asymmetrical, became essentially almost inverted, and the worst aviation disaster in American history then happened to this day. So we have to ask the questions in every one of these cases. Could it have been avoided? And in the procedures, who was doing the oversight? Who checked off the boxes? Who did the inspection? And was the FAA involved, or did they delegate it to somebody else who happened to either work for the airline or the manufacturer? It's still going on today. It's one of my biggest pet peeves. Thieves and peeves. Think about this. If I built the chair I'm sitting on right now, and I told you, oh, I inspected it, go ahead and sit on it, please don't sit in that chair. I want somebody else to inspect it to tell you it's okay. How in the year 2025, you could go from the last 40 years and allow the airlines to inspect their own work and the manufacturers to inspect their own work with their FAA designated inspectors who just happen to be on the payroll of either the airlines or the manufacturer? That to me is criminal. It's a conflict of interest. If my salary is being paid by the manufacturer, what's my incentive to stop the production line? Because I think there's a problem. You all get that picture. And if you all get it, what's wrong with the FAA? Guess what? They don't have the budget. They don't have the staff. They still don't have the budget. They still don't have the staff, which is why there's now still allowing Boeing to inspect their own planes. This is nuts. This is nuts. So I just thought I'd mention that. So as we continue to inspect and investigate what happened on that MD-11, the terrible crash that killed 14 people in Louisville, it all goes back to that. What have we learned? Right? The year is 2025. Okay. So now let's move on to the things that you're looking about with, should I still be flying in the wake of the shutdown? And even if it ends by a week from today, as I think it will, does that mean things are going to go back to normal? Well, they will get back to normal, but I have to put that as a qualifier. We're still 3,500 controllers short, right? Of the 313 air traffic control facilities in America, before the shutdown, 311 were understaffed. We already had a problem with guys working mandatory overtime in the one job they should never be working overtime. Now, having said that, remember, we have some good news here. During the shutdown, all the cancellations you've been hearing about, those are cancellations the FAA allowed the airlines to pick. The airlines picked the flights they were going to cancel because it wasn't about passenger load. It was about number of planes in the sky, right? A small 737 takes up as much radar space as a 777. It was inherent upon everybody to lower the number of planes in the sky that could be controlled safely. So a lot of 737s got canceled, not as many A350s and 777s. So an airline like Southwest got affected more because all they fly is 737s, right? Okay. Having said that, assuming it ended tomorrow, which it's not, but assuming it does end, let's say by a week from today, it'll take the airlines between 36 and 72 hours to get back to speed because they've got planes out of sequence, flight attendants out of schedule, and connecting flights going nowhere. So they'll get that together. They have plans in place now. They've been preparing for that. And then of course, you have to get ready for Thanksgiving weekend and the Thanksgiving holiday period. Last year, we set a record for the most number of passengers over that period. This year, advanced reservations are tracking 2% ahead of last year. So we're on track to make a new record. So when are you going to travel? All right. We all know about the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles was the movie made for that day. The worst ever day, right? Wednesday before Thanksgiving, right? John Candy is, wherever he's resting in peace, still laughing about that. Remember the famous line from that movie? Those aren't pillows, but we'll get to that later. Is that the worst day to travel this year? It's not. The worst day to travel this year is Sunday, November 30th, because a lot of people got smart. They're not leaving on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. They're leaving on the Friday before Thanksgiving, or maybe the Thursday before Thanksgiving. But that Sunday, November 30th, that's when everybody brilliantly thought, wait, what a great day to come back. If you can extend your trip, come back Tuesday or even better, Wednesday, after Thanksgiving, you have a better chance of not getting hurt in the crush because it's going to be chaotic, right? The same thing applies to the TSA agents, right? When they start coming back, the lines will decrease. right? Now, they didn't have a big staffing issue before, as much as the traffic controllers did, but you'll understand that your wait time at the terminal will come down accordingly. All right, so now you know about Thanksgiving. Now, a couple of other things we'll note before we say hello to everybody. In fact, let me say hello to everybody now. A lot of people want to say hello. Let's start from the top. Okay, Linda's saying hi from a very cold Naples, Florida. And Mary Louise is saying hello from a sunny Tempe, Arizona. Priya is saying watching from a snowy Chicago. That's right, it snowed. They had cancellations just based on weather. Speaking of snow, I have a report to make. I didn't think I'd be making it. The Wisconsin Badgers 2 days ago actually won a game. Don't ask me how that happened. I can tell you what didn't happen. The offense didn't win it. The defense did. And it started snowing in Madison, too. Maybe that has something to do with it. They beat Washington. I mean, that may be their only remaining win for the season, but at least something to be happy about. Hello to Priya in snowy Chicago. Okay, New Jersey saying hi from Deb. Sue saying hi from Hot Palm Springs. Priya says, it's 2.5 hours enough to go through global entry and recheck bags in Houston Airport. Well, let me give you the good news and the bad news. The global entry part is easy, right? I mean, it's the best federal program ever invented since sliced bread. I love it, right? And I'm sure everybody who's got it, who's watching me now, will attest to that. The problem in Houston, which makes no sense at all, is you're landing in Houston, you're going through global entry, right? You get your bags, and you might want to put them on the conveyor belt to go to your connecting flight, but now you got to go back outside and go through security again, and Houston is ill-equipped to do that, really long lines. But if you've got 2.5 hours, it'll take you maybe 3 minutes to go through global entry and maybe 30 to 40 minutes to go through TSA, so you'll be fine, okay? But anyway, they have to fix the TSA in Houston. It's a mess. And that's before the shutdown. It's everything. Hello. Camilla's saying hi from Tucson. Jean's saying, good morning from Tulsa. My son is an air traffic controller, hoping this deal goes through. I said it last week. I'll say it again. The economic imperative is strong for this deal to go through because the economic consequences have been severe. When you take away airlift, it's taking away more than your ability to go on vacation. It's goods and services. It's the economy moves on airlift, right? We haven't even gotten to cargo yet. So the financial consequences here are severe. Look, you want to know about financial consequences? How about the ice? Remember in Iceland, the volcano, and people didn't fly for 5 days? You know what finally happened? The airlines said, we're not listening to the authorities. We're going to fly anyway. And they all backed down and everybody flew. The consequences were that severe. Same thing now. So this is going to get solved, okay? And I'm telling you, my instinct tells me if the House votes this week, and my gut tells me they will, things will be back by Monday or Tuesday of next week. Okay. All right. Keeping on. Rashid saying good evening from Pakistan. What is best timing for promoting mountaineering, trekking, and Pakistani and Nepali tourists? You know what? I'm going to have to give that some thought. I can't give you that answer now because I'm not in the business of promoting anything. All right. But if you want to tell me a little bit more about what you're doing, and you can email me to peter@petergreenberg.com. I'll try to give you an intelligent answer on that. Colleen is saying hi from Denver. She says, thanks to your advice for always taking the first flight out. My SFO to Denver flight was on time and uneventful. We love the uneventful part, Colleen, and thank you for that. Jim and Harriet, usually they're the number one, but they came in a little bit late today from Richmond, Virginia. Nice to see you guys. Sandy's saying greetings from Charlotte. Daniel's saying, I am from Tanzania. Okay. Mr. Cooney is saying good morning from home. He's never home. Daniel says from Tanzania. As a tour operator, I'm looking for a connection of tourist business together. Okay, I'm not a networker in that respect, Daniel. I'm not a job festival guy, but you can also email me, peter@petergreenberg.com, and if I can help you, I will. Okay. Evelyn is saying back in Denver. Okay. Tayo is saying huge conflict of interest based on what I talked about Boeing. I can't believe we have such poor oversight from our government agencies till this day. Yeah, we called it to everybody's attention after the Boeing 737 MAX crashes in Ethiopia and Indonesia. Congress got excited and told Boeing they couldn't do it again. But they're doing it again. Why? Because they got to get their planes delivered. There was such a big lag on the production line because there was nobody there to inspect them. So now Boeing's doing the work. Something's wrong. All right. Ray's saying greetings from the DMV. Okay. Uh, Jordan saying hi. Christian saying, how do you deal with jet lag? What's your secret? All right. Well, Christian, I can give you this answer. I can't tell you it works for everybody. Tell you it works for me. Let's start with the beginning. People don't eat airline food because they're hungry. They eat it because they're bored. And let's face it, airline food is an oxymoron. So I BYO. What do I bring on the plane? Apples, pears, things that will hydrate me. No alcohol. That's the worst thing you can do at altitude. Instead, I cheat sometimes with ginger ale or with club soda. Better if I could do seltzer because the sodium content is lower, right? Then what do? If I want to stay awake, I stay awake. If I want to sleep, I sleep. If I want to binge watch 6 movies, I do that. But at least I get up twice during the flight and walk around, trying not to get decapitated by the beverage cart. And then the key to avoiding the jet lag has nothing to do with what you do on the plane. It's what you do when you land. I don't care if you land at 6 in the morning, you must stay up until midnight local time. And that means do not succumb to the idea of an afternoon nap. If you do that, no one will see you for 3 days, including you. Don't have a big, heavy lunch. It's the same effect. No one will see you for 3 days, including you. Stay up until midnight. If that means take a long walk, go shoot hoops, do whatever you want to do, just stay up. Then you'll cycle the first night, maybe 4 or 5 hours, and the second night you'll be back to normal. You do the exact same thing on the way back. Again, I tell you what works for me. Now, I only average about 4 hours of sleep a night, so maybe I'm a little different. But the question is, that's how I cycle. Try it, see if it works. Okay. Juan is saying hello from Raleigh. He says, getting ready for the Christmas market cruise in December. You'll have fun. Evelyn's saying, all right, business class food on flagship service on AA awful. Why are we surprised? Can we get down to a definition of airline food? It is by definition recooked at least twice. And then why do you think they coat it with such heavy sauces? In a vain attempt to maintain moisture. And you eat that and you just feel logy, right? Try to digest that at 35,000 feet. Why would you do that to yourself? You know why? Because you're bored, right? They put it in front of you, go, well, I got nothing else to do. I guess I'll consume this. There are no rules saying you got to do that. BYO. But if you're going to BYO, please don't do it from McDonald's. Please don't do cooked food that you then bring on the plane and stinks up the plane, right? Keep it simple. Not cooked, not smelly, healthy, fruit, veggies, raw vegetables, great, okay? That's what you got to do. Popcorn, big bags, so you can share with me. Okay, Valerie wants to know, are people still stuck in Jamaica? I'll give you a qualified yes. There are a number of, the infrastructure there is coming back, but not 100% yet. It will be back, at least at the airports, but not at the hotels. There are a number of resorts that have basically announced they are closing and will stay closed until March. Some have reopened. It depends on what side of the island you're on. But most of the people who are there have been able to get out. Evelyn says, hi from Nova Scotia, one of my favorite destinations in the world. 3 cheers out to Halifax. Love that place. Great restaurant there, by the way, called The Bicycle Thief. But what I love about Halifax, go to the Maritime Museum. The Maritime Museum is unbelievable. People forget that's where the Titanic was heading when it hit the iceberg. But so many things in that museum well worth seeing, okay? All right, let's continue to scroll up a little bit. One more thing I want to note, a little housekeeping note. Our radio show this week, Eye on Travel, on Saturday. You know where it's coming from? French Polynesia. It's coming from Tahiti, so check that out. That noise you hear behind me, they're getting ready for the conference tomorrow that I'm attending here in Riyadh called Tourize. 100 minister leaders from around the world, including Fortune 500 CEOs, hoteliers, airline reps, cruise line reps. You bet all the leaders are here to talk about all the big issues. I'll be there as well. I'll be moderating a couple of the panels, and hopefully the information I get, I'll be able to share with you next week for our global travel update. That music means they're still rehearsing. We're just going to have to live with that. Then, one other thing. Let's do the photo of the week while we got it. 3 cheers for Lillian Berger. And where is this? Can anybody tell me? I can tell you. It's Shallcross Lake in Delaware. Nice colors, waiting for the fall foliage. Nicely done, Lillian. We appreciate that. And if you think your photo qualifies as the photo of the week, you know what to do. Just email us, photocontest@petergreenberg.com. And if we agree that it's good, It goes right up there next to Lillian's. Okay? Now, a few more things. Here we go. Evelyn says, I flew Lufthansa Munich to Denver, amazing service. You know what? That Munich to Denver flight is great. You know why? What are they flying? They're flying an A380. How cool is that? Before that, they had the 747-800 on that route. What a great way to come back to the U.S. And going through customs in Denver is a breeze, right? I'm sure you'd agree, Evelyn. It was a great flight. And you know what? The service on Lufthansa, it was troublesome for a while. It's gotten back. Not 100%, but well worth the trip. And that flight, I would pick it any chance I got. In fact, we were coming back from Hawaii, and one of my crew members needed to get to New York. They didn't take the nonstop. They didn't go through LA. They went Honolulu, Denver, New York. Great connection. They loved it. Piece of cake. So I appreciate that advice and that report. Rashid says, how do you keep all that information in your mind? I just make it up. No, it's not true. I have a good memory, right? I mean, I cover this stuff. I live it, and happy to share it with you. Okay, a couple more things. Of course, the radio show coming up this Saturday from Tahiti, our tour around the entire Society Islands. And that means if you take a look at a map of the Society Islands, it's not just Tahiti and Bora Bora and Moorea and Raiatea and Taha. You're going out to the Astral Islands. You're going out to the Marquesas where we were. You're doing the Gambier Islands. The actual mass of islands that make up French Polynesia is as large as Europe, and nobody knows it. And if you ever have a chance to go out to the Marquesas, you will be spoiled beyond belief, not by luxury 5-star service, but by 5-star people. The amazing islanders of the Marquesas, where you're landing, maybe there might only be 400 people on the island, and you get to know all of them, and they get to know you, and everybody knows everybody else. And it's what a sense of community in the middle of, I hate to use this word because it's so often overused, but it truly is a paradise. And by the way, why were we there? Not just to do the radio show, but to shoot our next 1-hour television special called Hidden Tahiti. That'll be on the air next year. But speaking of hiddens, Hidden Malta is on the air now on PBS, and December 5th, it premieres on Amazon, Apple TV, and YouTube, so check your listings there. Of course, coming up later this year, we already have Hidden Alabama's on the air now with my tour guide, Martin Luther King III. And then coming up later this year, we have Hidden Hong Kong, Hidden Egypt, Hidden Maine, and many, many others. So check those out. I hope you will. And bottom line is, I got to get ready for the conference, so I'm going to sign off a little bit early this week. But you will see me next week from truly another distant location somewhere around the world. I'll give you a hint. We're starting to do our next 1-hour television special. It's called Hidden Route 66. So see if you can figure out where we'll be coming from. In the meantime, have a great rest of the week. Be safe. Let's hope the House votes, but don't get your hopes up that it's going to come back right away. Remember, we're still understaffed on the air traffic controller situation. That's going to take some time to work out. And the basic problems are still there with the FAA, not just with the controllers, with training, with inspection, with oversight, and with fines. You know, if the FAA sees there's a problem and they fine Boeing $3 million, that sounds like a lot of money. No, first of all, those fines end up getting mitigated down. That's wrong to begin with. And second of all, even at $3 million for companies like Boeing, it's simply the cost of doing business. Does it stop the bad behavior? Once again, I go back to this. Without severe financial consequences, bad behavior continues. We're going to continue to monitor this because it's our safety. It's also getting into the definition of what the FAA should be doing to begin with. Ask the NTSB. You guys should go, you can get this. The NTSB publishes every year their 10 most wanted list of urgent safety recommendations they've made to the regulatory agency known as the FAA, that the FAA either slow walked or ignored or did nothing. That's available. It's a public document. Get it, read it, then talk to your congresspeople. Ask them what they're doing about it, because the problems continue to persist. And if they do, guess what? Our safety's at risk. Just want you to think about that as I sign off from Saudi Arabia. Again, everybody, thanks for watching. Thank you, Anthony, for doing the boards back in Los Angeles. And I'll see you next week on another edition of Global Travel Update. Bye, guys.